What's happening, everybody? Hope everybody's having a fantastic Saturday. We are live, per usual. Normally come in on a Saturday, kind of yammer on about cars, different kind of motoring stuffs. So anyway, I figured I would catch up with you guys, see what you guys are up to these days. So here's the thing. Going to be talking about plans for Little Miss Revlon, plans for the Foxy, plans for basically everything. So coming in, Heavy Challengers coming in. What's up, man? Saying, hey, B, what's up, man? So here's the thing. We're coming into boost weather, right? This is that time of year when everybody starts getting all lathered up, all right? September. If you're up north, it's getting a little bit cool. If you're down here, you're praying for boost weather. So, man, I tell you what, we're looking forward to it this year. So, what are the plans for the Mistress? Well, I tell you what, here's the thing. This December, January, February, I'm going to try to put this car into the 9s on pump gas. I've basically kind of just resigned myself to that. I think that getting so close last year was such a tease. And if you guys don't remember or just weren't hanging around or just didn't know about it, on stock boost on 93 octane, that girl back there went 1016 and a 1017 and a 1019. And I didn't really pull out all the stops. Here's the deal. I was trying to see how fast I could get the car to run on what would in essence be stock power. Not just stock boost, but stock power. All of the tuning that I had done was basically in the transmission tune. I had done a few things in the engine tune to try to, well, it really wasn't trying to do anything. It was just there to accommodate the transmission tune. But since then, I've thrown more fuel at it. The car's responded well. It's picked up power. And I have been patiently waiting on boost weather to hit. So, Jonathan Hamlet's in. What up, Jay Ham? Hope everything's going well, brother. Long time no chat, man. You gotta hit me up on the telephone, bro. So here's the thing, though. To get the car into the 9s is going to take not really much work. Well, some work on the tune. I've got a little bit of fuel I can add to it, I think, that I may need to add, I should say, with the cooler weather. Injector duty cycle looks pretty good. You know, it gets kind of high, though, in those low DA days. So a move to a different injector might help with that just a little bit, an improved spray pattern. And I mean to tell you guys, I'm looking maybe pick up half a tenth here. Part of that is going to be me getting my ass back in the gym and start training again. For those of you guys that, I haven't really been saying too much about this, haven't been able to get to the gym, had a jacked up shoulder. Basically, mechanically it was fine. I'd pinched a nerve in my shoulder. If you guys know anything about pinching nerves when, part of your arm goes numb, that's always a real treat. So, basically it's all worked back out now. Everything's cool. But between that and the wrist and everything else, haven't been able to do anything on the bag, haven't been able to do really anything. It's kind of had me bummed out a little bit. Plus, just kind of got lazy. So between the little cute pussy excuse that I was coming up with there for myself, and the fact that I just decided to sit around and get fat for a little bit, got to cut some weight. So looking to cut about 25 pounds myself, and I'm thinking about dropping a little bit more weight with the car. And what does that mean? Well, guys, listen, I think I'm just going to go ahead and play the game this year. As earth-shattering as this may sound, and as bummed out as the world is going to be, I'm sure, nobody cares. Anyway, now I'm going to be pulling the passenger seat out this fall when I'm shooting for those 9s. That seems to be what folks have done leading into this. And to do it on 93 octane is going to be tough because, again, I am kind of going about this at stock power. And Guys, I've tried throwing some timing at it already. Here's the weird thing about that, though. I've tried throwing some timing at it. The car just doesn't like it. Realistically, I'm fuel quality limited. What's happening is anytime I've tried to throw even a small amount of timing at the car, it immediately starts going into short-term knock retard. So, you know, throw more fuel at it, didn't really quell the problem. Stock timing with this car is just basically where it wants to be. And we talk about cars that are, you know, people call them factory freaks or whatever. All it is a statistical anomaly. Revlon may be a little bit more on the, it's called tolerance stacking, by the way, before I get too far ahead of myself. And I think Revlon, aka the Mistress, I think she's got, maybe it's a tolerance stacking thing, but the car is quick even for stock. And so anyway, long story short, I've tried throwing timing at it, didn't like it. Threw a little bit more fuel at it, the car liked that, but it just didn't like the extra timing. Oh, by the way, no, I'm going straight 93, no race gas mix, no butane, no Torco, no whatever else you want to come up with. I'm going to be going after this on straight 93 octane. So we'll see how it all shapes up. You know, what can I do in the meantime to drop weight? Well, I don't know if I want to go so far as to put aftermarket, you know, I think, who is it? Dang it, Speed Logics, their bumper supports. I've thought about that, but I don't know that it's worth the money for the weight. But then again, I mean, we are talking about dropping weight, and that's the ultimate goal here. So that's a kind of a step in that direction could take place. But again, I want to be able to do it on stock boost and primarily on 93 octane. But again, I will be playing the game, and I will be pulling stupid ass mosquitoes. By the way, it's raining down here. And the problem with it raining down here is that it just rained just enough to resurrect every freaking mosquito since the freaking Paleozoic era back in the damn Tyrannosaurus Rex. Damn sons of bitch, they're everywhere. And we're getting these freaking big ones too. They come and they suck your freaking neck off and you look like a freaking raisin. Anyway, it's raining right now, which is part of the other thing. I can't go out and play and get data or pick a race or anything. Anyway, let me say what's up to everybody real quick. Kobe Warren's coming in saying, "What's up, man?" My Colio saying, "You Professor Mason got the arm flex. I like it." Anthony D said, "Hey, big guy, what's up, Anthony?" Heavy Chowder saying, "Loving the cool weather here in Ohio." Yes, I'm jealous. Kobe Warren saying, "I'm getting a Hellcat next month. Do you need a tune with a 309 gear?" No, you don't, but yes, you do. The reason why you would want a tune with a 309 is because without the tune, the driver command torque is a little bit soft for the 309 gear. That's basically the, how do I put this? The throttle response, basically. But the amount of load that the computer will allow the engine to produce is a little bit soft for the 309. So it'll feel, I'm not going to say it's going to feel weaker. It'll just feel a little bit softer than you might expect it to until you really start showering down on it. What I like to do is throw about 10% driver command torque at the car with that 309. And that's when she starts feeling like she's got something really going on underneath your foot. There's Jonathan Hamlet. What up, John? Jazz Hellcat saying, "Have you go to work with Rip-A-Tune?" Have I done any work with Rip-A-Tune lower pulley yet? So here's the thing. Personally, no, because I live in Houston at basically 0 DA. And the problem with that is if you're talking about the incognito with no tune, bad idea, especially on a Hellcat, mainly because the data that Dr. Diff was able to get on that Rip-A-Tune pulley was not very flattering. Justin, aka Dr. Differential, had a customer come in and wanted to try out the Rip-A-Tune pulley. The problem with that in no tune is that short-term knock retard went into straight up freak out mode and was pulling like 7 to 9 degrees of timing. So believe me, any amount of power that was picked up by the extra boost, which I think was like 1.5 pounds or 2 pounds, something like that, was immediately just squashed And then some by the fact that the car just was not cool with that pulley being on the car. Now again, this was in a little bit cooler weather, which kind of is a hint here. And that's probably the reason why it was kind of freaking out, because, you know, here it is, it's making this extra boost, but it may have gone outside of one of the air tables. There's an air charge table, and I think it's 1.5 kilograms per second. This car back here will actually eclipse that in real low DAs with stock pulleys. All right, so you can imagine going with a more aggressive pulley combination in those same cooler weathers. You exceed the airflow table, plus there's just more racket going on without the proper adjustments to your knock sensors. It's going to start yanking timing all over the place, because at certain RPM it knows to look for a certain amount of knock sensor feedback. It's basically just a knock sensor voltage. So anyway, that is a real long-winded way for me to tell you, no, I haven't. Stock cars down here get pissed, and you know, if you're up north and you're living in a DA, or I'm sorry, you're living in a physical altitude that's more than 1,500 feet, certainly 2,000 feet, then that pulley will basically DA correct your car to zero. But just be careful with that thing. Data log it, especially if you're trying to go about it without a tune. And if you've got a red eye, I think you might be able to get away with it a little bit easier with a red eye than you can a Hellcat, but you don't want to go at any of these things without a tune. Hang on just a second. I'm going to crack this thing open here. All right. So, getting back to it. Jazz Hellcats, do you need any more than 93 octane and a stock red eye? Not based on the timing values. I haven't seen them really take off with race gas. The timing values in the red eye are pretty, well, comparatively speaking. If you're going to compare them to a Hellcat, they're going to be lower. And the reason why they're lower is because the larger 2.7 liter IHI supercharger just simply generates more heat than the 2.4. And because of that, if you ever were to see the timing tables, either just look at any of the timing tables from a Hellcat and get familiar with them, and then immediately move over to a Demon or a Red Eye, you'll notice the first thing is that you're missing about 4 or 5 degrees of timing. And the initial thought is, get that son of a bitch. Damn it. Sucker's dead now. What the initial thought on that might be, okay, well, you know, let me just throw more timing at it. But when we've had them on the track and we've had them on the dyno, I've never seen a red eye pick up significantly just by throwing timing at it, or fuel, or both. So again, we start getting into more, it's more of a heat issue than anything else. So, you know, would 93 octane work, or anything more than 93 octane work? It certainly wouldn't hurt it. But I don't think that there's anything really in the tune that would allow you to do any better than 93 octane unless you're running E85 or race gas. And at that point, even a couple of more degrees of timing, even playing around with it, just never saw any huge gains there. I want to say that every Hellcat, and this is again the way that the dyno was reading at the time, every Demon that went on that dyno was making 650 to 658 to the rear wheels. SAE corrected. A Hellcat, a healthy Hellcat, would make somewhere around 595. It would never make 600. We only had 1 or 2 unicorns crack the 600 number. But for the most part, you didn't see a big difference between the two, right? I mean, you're less than 10% to the rear wheels. So take that a step farther. When guys started throwing timing and fuel and things like that at the car, it just didn't really respond, and it would maybe go from 650 to 667, or 650 to 670. But you didn't really get this big power gain out of trying to throw the kitchen sink at the car. So, and that's on race gas too, by the way, guys. It's kind of tough to say that it would really benefit from it. Now, you start throwing more boost at it, then yeah, maybe. But see, the other part about the red-eye is that you've also got to meander past some of the thermal issues. Again, because that supercharger just generates more heat, you'll have, there's a limp mode that you have to account for with the red-eyes, and this is early on before anybody really had an idea of what was going on with these cars. And we were one of the first shops to play with a Demon, and so the Demon that I had at the drag strip, it was hysterical because it would be on a hunt. I would, you know, in 3,000 foot DA, you know, 140 60 foot, 141 60 foot, on its way to try to run a 970, 980 with just the pulley setup that we had. Again, in DA that it had no business, running any of those numbers in. On the Nittos, by the way. And then at about the 1,000 foot mark, the car would just nose over. Maybe 1,100, but it was never really past the 1,100 foot mark. And the car just be pull. I mean, it would come out of the hole like a banshee, just awesome. Everything was going great, and then it would just lay over way early. And it comes out, it was a thermal issue that you had to go in and kind of, at that time, you had to, there were some creative things you had to do to get around it. Now HP Tuners has got some parameters already set for that, but early on there wasn't any provision for that, and so it had us baffled. Looking at the data log, the throttle source that you're logging would just go pedal, thermal. Going, what the hell? So anyway, again, that thing just is a heat pump. Hemi Cheller is saying, can 93 be tested to be sure you're getting 93 like guys test E85? Unfortunately, no. Not that I'm aware of anyway. The way that fuel is tested is, it's a little bit different than E85 for the layman. You can't just do the water test, do the shaky, and get your reading for percentage of ethanol. In fact, you're not testing the ethanol in the gasoline. You're only testing the amount of ethanol that's in that fuel. So, unfortunately, no way to test the actual quality. Sam's checking in. B Mason, what's up? What's up, man? Slash checking in saying, I got smoked by a 2020 Supra in my 18 Scat Pack. It obviously had aftermarket stuff, super loud ass exhaust, and sounded like guns firing. Guys, look, don't sleep on the little Supra. You guys know I'm a big fan of that car. Look, it doesn't take much. Well, it does, but listen, primarily tuning and a few bolt-ons to get one of those into the 11.0 range. Now, granted, and that's just boost only. Now, granted, there's not a lot of these things running 9s the way that, you would, every Supra runs 9s, right? Well, not really. But no, the new Supra, yeah, believe me, there's some things you can do to them that really, that really wake those things up. Sam saying it's an expensive day when you hit the go pedal and get a free rev at 90 miles an hour. Yep. Boosted is asking, do I have the world's fastest stock Hellcat? First of all, we have to designate what is stock. The car has really never run in pure stock, which would be as delivered with either summer tires or all seasons. But do I have the fastest? Well, no, not by the numbers. All right. So let me rephrase that. I don't know if I've got the fastest or not. I don't know what the record, if there is a record, for stock boost on 93 octane. I mean, on 93 octane. Okay, listen. Here's the thing. I made it a point for the longest time that if anybody wanted to take a look at my tune, I would have no problem showing you the engine side of my tune, because I didn't make any changes to it other than the rev limits, and that was there mainly to help the car for shifting purposes, because I'd raised the shift points. And you almost have to get into, when you say stock, you almost start to climb into this rabbit hole of micro records, really. So I don't know if I've got the fastest with a 309, but I can tell you this. I don't know of a lot of 93 octane only cars that have run in the 9s. There might be a few out there. I know that there are some on race gas that have run 980s and 990s. I know that there's one or two on E85 that have run 980s as well. But when guys start trying to go faster, they kind of stop playing around with 93 octane, mainly because there's better available. I mean, there's race gas available. There's E85 available, so why wouldn't you go that route? Especially E85. You get your hands on, good E85. Let's say you're running straight Ignite, E85 or E90, and you've got the you've got a twin pump setup that's going to allow you to run E85, like injected engineering or the like. That's really where you have an inherent advantage, because now you're running a fuel that doesn't care how much timing you seem to throw at it. It'll keep making power until the engine just doesn't like the timing value anymore. It says, I'm not making more power anymore. You just back it off a couple of degrees from that point and you're set. The problem is I'm not doing that. I'm going at it from a little bit different approach. I'm going at it from the approach of not necessarily as delivered, but just above stock. Super stock, if you will. But I'm using all Mopar parts bin parts. I'm using a 309 gear, a red-eye drive shaft, donated by multiple Mopars. Thank you again, brother. But I'm running basically a bunch of factory parts on a drag pack. Mopar rear seat delete, for example. That's kind of the way that I wanted to go about doing this, and I've been running with the passenger seat in the car the whole time, and this is where the weight and everything else kind of comes into question, I guess, is because to play this game of who has the fastest, I think you have to put it into a range. You guys will get into DA corrections and, well, what weight were you at and what was your actual weight, and they'll do some weight, the weight conversions and all this other stuff. Like, dude, I don't have time to get into all that. Look, whatever the car ran, that's what it ran. And did you have the front seat in? Well, no. Did you? Well, yes, I did. And so that doesn't make me any more morally just than somebody that pulled the seat out. That's just somebody that pulled the seat out. Again, that's the game that we're kind of playing here. So, if it's going to be about how much weight can you pull out of the thing and all that stuff, here's my thing. At what point does the car stop being the car? In other words, I've been running my car with the stock bumper supports, the passenger seats in the car, but it's got a Mopar rear seat delete. Think we can let that slide a little bit, considering that the Hellcat, considering that the red eye has a rear seat delete option. I think we can also get past, it's got a drag pack, and it's going to have a drag pack because you're not going to run this car on street tires, right? So anyway, once you get past some of the red tape, right, when does the car quit becoming the car that it is? So if I put lightweight bumper supports, is it any less of a car? What if I put, I don't know, a different hood on the car? Or what if I gutted the inside of the car even more? Instead of just taking out the seat, why stop there? Why not take out the door panels, the speakers, the headliner, the back panels, take everything out in that respect. I mean, when, the carpet out of the car, all of the sound deadening, all of that, is it still the same car? What if I took the fenders off of the car, even took the trunk lid off of the car, removed the hood completely? Would it still be the Mistress? Would it still be Revlon? Would it still be a Hellcat? How about the doors? I mean, are doors really even necessary? I mean, they're only there to help you get in and out of the car, but if the doors weren't there, it'd be even easier to get in and out of the car. And then just add weight, remove those. Is it still the same car? I think you guys can see where I'm going with this. It's a weird, slippery slope that at some point you have to say, that's not the same car. And my thing is this, the question that I ask, because look, you know what I'm getting at, guys. Listen, what's the difference between porn and art? Well, nobody really has a definition. I mean, you can't really, but here's the thing, the difference between porn and art, I know what I'm looking at if I'm looking at porn, and I know what I'm looking at if I'm looking at art. You see what I'm saying? It's the same kind of value argument that comes with the which one is fastest list, because nobody has agreed to what doesn't equate the car anymore. So because of that, I'm going to say this. If you remove the seat, fine. If you remove the back seats, fine. You know, the bumper supports, fine, whatever. But, you know, what about brakes? You know, if I go with different brake setup, does that change things up? These are the things, I mean, these are the things that have to be answered. But in as delivered, except for a gear and this, and again, we start really microizing this thing. Getting down to that level, yeah, it's the fastest one on the planet. Why not? I'll take it. Body counts at 3, I think now. Sending those skeeters back to hell. Oh, hang on a second. Hang on. Sean checking in. Saying hood lifters. I like it. Yeah, I'm going to stick with the prop rod. Only because there's a little bit of a history with this prop rod. The prop rod's got history. But thank you very much for the contribution, brother. I appreciate that. Let's see. BB78 saying Steeler ship replaced cooling system except water pump. Gave them 180 thermostat and car still sees 215-ish during cruising and cool downs when at stoplights. 90 here in Dallas. Thoughts? You've got to adjust your fans, my brother. Listen, when the car is at a standstill and the fans aren't on to help, well, they have to be in concert with your thermostat, then it's just going to act the same way that it did before with your higher thermostat, because the fans just aren't kicking on at those lower speeds, where you simply just don't have enough airflow around the cooling system to help to bring those temperatures down. That's what the fans are for when you're going slow. Get the car tuned and it should be fine as far as the fans go. And of course, you probably already noticed this, but on the freeway, you're probably running between 185 and 190-ish. And that's about right for 180-degree thermostat. Race Gas checking in saying, hey, what's up, y'all? What's up, man? Race Gas saying, those Supras run hard with minimal mods, and the 2021 has got a few upgrades that'll make them even more potent. Better head design. So, yeah, there's one down here. Really cool guy that owns the car. He's had it. Bought it brand new and has been slowly but surely making some changes to this thing, and car runs pretty good, man. I'm really warming up to those. Jazz asking, what's the highest horsepower dry nitrous can a stock tuned red eye take? Depends on what the tune will allow for, but I really wouldn't go much more than about 100 shot. I don't like any more than about 100 shot on those cars, and let me tell you why. It's not the shot of nitrous that I'm worried about. It's the distribution of the nitrous. It's not uncommon from a distribution standpoint to have certain cylinders get a heavier shot than others. So just, without overloading the system, without going into like a direct injection or, right there along the hat, all that kind of stuff. 100 shot, just to kind of cool things off a little bit, I think would be just fine. They've got enough injector to help carry. This is the other thing. Well, actually, let me start over. What's the biggest you can put on there safely? A 0 shot, okay? But I know where you're coming with this. I would say the most I would put at it, maybe 75, at the very most 100. But again, I would still, and you've got a tuned car, I would still go with an injector upgrade either way. Go with a set of 1000s just to give you some overhead for when that thing does fire. But again, yeah, I would certainly take a look at that. I just really don't like big dry shots on these cars because you've got to kill timing so much to accommodate it. SRT James saying, what's up, guys? What's up, man? Slash saying, I made my own aluminum bumper for my Charger, no welding involved, fraction of the cost versus speed logic on my YouTube channel. There's a complete video. Very nice. I'll have to check that out. SRT James saying, nice, I need a new bumper. I hate the plastic. Yeah, I hear that. Thanks again, Sean. Appreciate that, buddy. Ken saying, what about the front sway bar? Will it help with weight transfer? Well, yes and no. It's mainly in weight reduction. The thing is, you got to remember that you've got an independent rear car, and so as opposed to the body basically squatting down on top of a solid rear axle, you've got independent rear suspension, and instead of going up and down, it actually cambers in. So when you do that, you lose contact patch. And so, yeah, more weight transfer is good, but only to a certain point. It's one of the reasons why the Demons, when you put it in drag mode, front goes to full soft, but the rear is more or less at sport mode. And that's the reason why, is to try to keep that rear end kind of flat at the launch. Let's see. Sean saying, no shame in a little weight reduction, but outside stock appearance is a must, for sure. I'll have to agree with that. Callus is asking, if you take off the supercharger and add turbos, is it still technically a Hellcat? Damn good question. My man is on point with that question. So that's come up a couple of times in conversation. All things being equal, does the Hellcat revolve around being supercharged to be able to be called a Hellcat? I'll say this, I would still call a Lightning if it had turbos. I would still call a GT500 a GT500 if somebody put turbos on that. So I would have to say the same applies here. Yeah, the Hellcat would certainly still be a Hellcat if it had turbos. But I will say this, would probably raise a lot of eyebrows, primarily because Mopar guys are typically a little bit more traditionalist, I guess you could say, than other factions. And so would I say that it's still a Hellcat? Yeah, I probably would. But there are folks that would argue that statement. But good question though, Catalyst. Maybe I'd say, hey, hope the Hurricane was a non-event for you. It was, thank you. Very much, but, you know, heart goes out to the folks that got hit with that monster. The good thing, though, is that that thing was on a hunt, man. That thing is, like, freaking blistering fast for a Hurricane. So thank goodness it blew through the way that it did. Hit me and say, hey, here we go. If you found a used Hellcat with a P1400 code, but was returned to stock, would that turn you away from the car? That would depend on what else I saw when I looked at the car. So, look, let's be honest. A lot of these cars get tunes. I wouldn't necessarily have a problem with that. I especially wouldn't have a problem with it if I could track down the history of the car. If I couldn't track down the history of the car, I didn't have a build sheet, or I didn't have a business card in the owner's manual, something like that. You know, some way I could call the shop and say, hey, what all was done to this thing? You know, and it comes back and it was a 4.5 Whipple with a, stroker motor and all this other stuff. Who knows? Maybe you're getting a deal on a lot of used hot rod parts. But if I know the history of the car, I don't have a problem with it. If I don't know the history of the car and I think that there's some, and I'm going over the car and I'm not seeing anything really too jacked up, everything's where it should be professionally either put back to stock, or it just never really had anything, it was just a tuned car, wouldn't necessarily have a problem with it. But here's the thing. See, I say that, but here's the thing. a lot of times when guys get rid of tuned cars, it's because something went wrong with the car. You know, putting it back to stock and selling it isn't necessarily a bad thing. Man, I would just have to know more about the car. I really would. Again, there are so many Hellcats in existence that I can find another one. That's not a problem. And finding one without a P1400 is not that difficult to do. So, again, my advice, if you can find out more about the car, then by all means, do it. And most dealerships, by the way, are very accommodating in getting you that information. They'll you know, they'll ask, or the owners, when they get rid of those cars, are pretty adamant about saying, yeah, you know, the cars, you know, had some work done to it, but it was returned to stock. Some dealers are actually kind of savvy to that, and they'll scan the car beforehand. They see a P1400, they'll just ask the guy what was done to the car. For the most part, that's rarely a thing that's going to bother anybody, and you've got to kind of be in the know before that's even going to be a problem for most buyers anyway. But yeah, just make sure you get the right information on that car though, buddy, because that sucks. Sean saying, I'm probably going bumper support, still looks stock, same as lightweight battery as far as I'm concerned. I would have to agree with that. SRT's asking, did I tune the fan for the thermostat? Yes, I did. Absolutely did that. Sean saying he takes the sway bar off only for race day. Good idea. Jazz Hellcat saying, thanks, Pete. Thanks, Jazz. Sean's asking, how important is it to launch a Hellcat in street compared to sport? Well, I gotta tell you, I launched mine in street mainly because at my power level, the car just seems to like it. Now, I've launched it in sport before, and it didn't make that big of a difference, but the car has been the most consistent in terms of putting power to the ground in street trim. So that's where I've left it. I don't run the car down the track in track mode, mainly because that's really more for, that track setting isn't for drag strip track. That's really more for like a closed circuit track. And I don't like the shifting in track. It's just real, it's always been kind of jerky, especially in the earlier cars. It was a little bit jerkier than in the later cars. But I am quicker in sport for trans mode as opposed to track, by about half a tenth, in some cases to a tenth. Queasy saying, what's up, B-Mason? What's up, Queasy? Let's see. Oh, Sean saying, I put a solid in my 03 Terminator. People said it wasn't a Cobra anymore. Well, you know. No, getting back to it, as far as, you know, what I'm going to, you know, try to do with that thing, you know, it's going to depend on what the DA is going to act like too, because again, you guys know just as well as I do, it's not just about how much power the car is making. It's putting it to the ground, it's getting the right staging, it's getting the car to the staging lane at the right temperature. I mean, everything is so important once you start filing down these numbers to the nth degree that a lot of folks have been doing. And you know, a lot of the guys, these are some pretty seasoned racers, and they're taking advantage of some racers' tricks on getting these cars down the track. And of course, I've been employing all those same tricks myself in an effort to try to get this thing as low as it'll go. Now, if you're going to ask me if I think I'll be able to cover the number, I'm right now saying, look, don't bet the farm on this, okay? I'm serious. I'm the first one to tell you that if I was a betting man, I'd be betting on me not putting the thing into the nines. My goal is to scare the living hell out of the nines, though. You know, get that 1007, you know, get that 1003. Something that is just sitting right there staring at a 9-second pass. I would love to be able to, and really this is more to the point, I would very much love to be able to replicate and duplicate some of the times that I used to see demons running at the drag strip. It used to be that in really low DA, or I'm sorry, not really low, in like 1,000 foot DA, demons were running like 1020s, 10.0s. That's kind of where I'd like to have the car running in negative DA. So, you know, the car is simply not making enough power to go deep into the nines, or not even deep into the nines, even to get close to scaring the nines at that elevation. But she'll get damn close. I mean, she'll be running low 20s, high teens in that 1,000 foot area fairly consistently. And by the way, 93 octane demons struggle to run that number. So at that altitude, at least in my experience, what I've seen. Let's see. Kobe's asking, do you have to have a better drive shaft to go race, and what all should I get to make the Hellcat safe to drag? Well, if you're stock, here's what I'll recommend. First of all, it's got to be on a tire. Safety first, and the most safe thing you can do is put the car on a tire before you do anything else. Your stock drive shaft, if you're launching the car at, say, 1,200 to 1,500 RPM, your stock drive shaft will be fine. I mean, we've got guys down here with 1050, 1040, 1030 cars running the stock non-red eye drive shaft and aren't having any issues with them. I know that Sean is running the latest, his was a prototype actually, but the latest twin CV joint DSS drive shaft. Very good unit from everything that I hear. You may look into that drive shaft as well. But if you're a stock car, get yourself a set of Bravados, just the 18-inch Bravados. Get a set of 305, 45, 18 ET Street R tires for the rear. Air them to about 22 PSI for the drag strip. Do a nice cleanup on the burnout. Let her rip. Launch it at about 1,200 RPM. Be just fine. That's really all you have to do. You know, there's nothing. A helmet, obviously. But the biggest thing you can do to make your car safe for the drag strip is get in the habit of practicing with your car on the street. Get in the habit of rolling into the throttle, trying to whittle your. It's a fun game, right? I mean, at this point we're going to play, and when you're playing a game, you have to have a goal. And in this case, just play with trying to get your 0 to 60 time as low as you can on your street setup. If you're running street tires, this is going to be a pointless game. But if you're running drag radials on the street, like most guys do, you know, whittle that launch technique down. Learn the car. Know what it's going to act like. Know what it's going to do. Just find a secluded spot where you know you're not going to get hassled. Try to get as much playtime, practice time in as you can. The better you are as a driver, the better that you're going to be able to react. And really, you don't even react. It's just something weird happens. You compensate for the weirdness, and then you keep going along the way. And the way that you get away with that, and the way that you develop that skill set, which you can develop the skill set, is just by playing. And I'll give you a perfect example. Foxy. So for you guys that don't know, Foxy's my original Fox body Mustang, and I used to do all kinds of stupid stuff with this car, and that playtime is what allowed me the skill set to not really get intimidated by the car, or at least know that if something goofy did happen, that I had the skill set to typically unwind whatever situation was going on. But yeah, there wasn't a time when I drove this car where it wasn't getting hung out sideways going around some corner, that's for sure. Let's see. Sean's asking, in current form, aren't you maxed out at 1016? Weight reduction needed to beat that, probably, right? No. In fact, I'll say that I've picked up probably half a tenth at least with some of the changes that I've made to the car. And I've seen that in the mile an hour out the back door. This thing is dragging some MPH with it now that it just wasn't before. So I think that I'm about half a tenth to a tenth quicker now, relatively speaking, than what I was before. So that puts you at, let's be generous and say it's a 1010 or a 1009 car right now in those conditions. That's about where I want to be. If it goes nines, then great. And basically, I'll be losing the weight myself too. I mean, I'll be cutting quite a bit of weight to, you know, coming into this fall and winter. But, you know, the idea is to try to whittle the thing down to where it's at least got a puncher's shot at getting into that 9-second range. And again, bold, it's a very bold endeavor to try to go after. I mean, it's a goal that is going to be tough to accomplish, but I think with a couple of more tweaks and a little bit more data, I can get it maybe another couple of hundredths in the bag, so to speak, that will at least help me along the way. And again, at this stage of the game, we are talking about hundredths of seconds that I'm trying to pick up. But we'll see. Let's see. But it is going to be very tough. It's going to be tough to even cover that number, if I'm being honest. That was just a freaking lottery day that we had, or lottery night, I should say, that we had that night. Slash is saying, in Omaha, it is 100 degrees tomorrow and then 54 degrees this Tuesday. Better TA is coming. Yeah. And Sean saying his drive shaft is quite durable, and thank you. You bet, man. No, I'm glad you love it, man. That's awesome. Kobe saying, thank you. I'm upgrading for the 392. I was running 1204 in that car. Hey, Jason, thank you very much. Asking, do you think Dodge will ever increase NA's horsepower in the 392s? Has been at 45 for the longest, and a bump above 500 would be nice. My thoughts. Well, so I can tell you what I would like to see. I can tell you what I would hope to see. I don't know if reality is going to go along with those hopes and dreams and all of that, but at some point there's gonna have to be a bump, and I don't know where the bump is gonna come from. Look, here's the problem. The 392 is really good at what it does. I mean, it is exceptionally good at what it does, which is to briskly motivate a vehicle that's basically 4,200 pounds, give or take, to mid to low 12-second ETs. Put that thing on a tire or on a drag pack in cold weather, and you'll run 1170s with that car. And I just know that because I've done it. That's really hard to do. That's extremely hard to replicate. So, the only way to get more power is going to be with a revised camshaft and with a revised intake manifold. The reason why I say revised intake manifold is because unless they take the stock camshaft and tighten up the LSA, the lobe separation angle, to make the intake runner less active, the only thing that is holding that car back is the power curve as it starts to eclipse about 5,500 RPM. It just kind of flattens out. A lot of that has to do with the fact that the intake manifold just kind of runs out of breath at that point. It's not the heads. The heads are amazing on these Hemis just in terms of actual flow. Anywhere between 330 and 340 CFM depending on the flow bench. That's insane. So there's that at least to consider. But so when, and let me also tell you this: when the 392 was in development with a revised version of the 6.1 intake, it was making over 500 horsepower, and that would have been great on paper. The problem is that when you compared that power curve to the curve that the intake that it has on it now with the dual mode intake, when you compare the power curves, the newer intake just destroyed that other intake in torque production down low. I think it was to the tune of like 60, I'm going to say 60. I can't remember the number exactly, but if it wasn't 60, it was 80 or something stupid pound-feet of torque that it wasn't making down low. So from your point of view, the two lines were like this. And I mean, they didn't start to converge until way, way, way high in the RPM range. We're talking probably over that 5,500 RPM mark. Well, considering that you're only running the thing to 6,200 RPM, that's not going to do you any good, because the only time the car is making more power is right before the shift, and when you shift, your shift point drops in a lower torque point on the power curve, and a spot you're making less torque, so the car would be slower even though it'd be making more horsepower, such as physics. So what you would have to do is you would have to have a dual runner style intake manifold, just a little bit bigger ports, leave the length the same, little bit bigger ports, and a little bit tighter lobe separation on that camshaft. Could be the same, everything else, just instead of 121, drag it down to 117, 118. That would be just enough to kick you up over that 500 foot-pounds of torque, 500 horsepower area, and it would do it a little bit further out, but not enough to really matter. And well, actually, the tighter LSA would kind of still keep it somewhat RPM limited, but it'd make more mid-range power, and might even make a little more peak power further out. But to get that extra flow and to make those runners a little bit less active, the intake runners, that's what I would do. And like I say, I could probably pick up that 15 horsepower just with those two changes, certainly with the intake manifold for sure. The problem is the weight of the vehicle. The weight of the vehicle is what stings you because you've got to get this barge moving, man. I mean, seriously. And any horsepower that you gain up top has got to be significantly more than the amount of torque that you lose down low to get the car moving through the first, say, 100 feet of the drag strip. Let's see. I think I've already said this, but Kobe's saying, oh yeah, he's upgrading from the 392 and he was running 1204s. It's still a good time for that car. Sean saying under 1,000 foot DA in a week should be enough to break my Minnesota 1020, but not quite ready to break my 1007. Very true. And again, Jason, thank you very much. Sean saying, Kobe, that's a solid time for a 392 car. I ended up trading off my 392 for a Hellcat. That's what a lot of us did. Kobe saying, thank you, man. Thank you, brother. Oh, Sean's just letting him know, too, that his best time in the 6-speed was a 1225 at 114. It cost him a king's ransom to get there. Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong, man. The 392 cars are fun to drive in manual form, but, you know, just don't get real worked up about ETs with those cars. And he was just saying Hellcats was better alternative with the 8-speed. Yeah, it is. Kobe saying nice time for the 6-speed. Yeah, it's quick for a 6-speed for sure. Sean saying, you think overdrive pulleys would be a benefit to Foxy, or do you already have something like that? Are you trying to find another 10th in the car? Actually, no, not really. 351 car, what it really needs is it needs to go back to, it needs one of two things. It either needs a hell of a lot better electric fan. This thing's got one of the old school, you know, Black Magic style fans that just does not draw enough air. It either needs a much better electric fan, or it just needs to go back to a clutch fan. Look, the car is, and to be honest, I don't even think I would notice a difference between, you know, a fresh clutch fan and an electric fan setup on this car, just especially in terms of just playing around and driving the thing on the street. Mainly because, look, the car makes a ton of torque. It's got the stock pulleys on it. We're talking about gains or losses here that I really wouldn't see. What I may do though is this: I may go with a like a Cobra water pump pulley, which is just a little bit bigger water pump pulley, which would slow it down. Sucker is right out of range too. Which would slow it down just a little bit. Put a clutch fan on it, which would, you know, kind of, you know, it'd pick up a little bit of power with the slowing the water pump down, but it'd lose maybe, you know, 3 horsepower with the clutch fan. So it picks up 3, loses 3, it's a wash, and I get a better cooling car. So that may be the direction that it ends up going. It's just going to depend. Driving the thing around in the summertime sucks because I'm having to run the fan all the time, and that's, damn it, sucker got lucky. But I'm having to run the fan all the time, and because I'm having to run the fan all the time, you know, I can just already envision the fan taking a crap. And if the clutch fan fails, it just fails locked up. So anyway, we'll see how that goes. But we'll see. I mean, like I said, I played around with that idea. You know, if I go with pulleys and I stick with a clutch fan, then, you know, I think that may end up actually being a smarter play. And just go full on pulleys. Go with a smaller crank, bigger water pump, and leave it at that. Mr. Foreman is saying, I'm seriously thinking about selling the SRT and going back to the old hot rod style. The Challenger has gotten a bit stagnant. You know, I tell you something. There's a lot of guys that are kind of in your predicament, and you know, I can't say that I was necessarily. I can't say that I differed too much. Let's just put it that way. You know, between Sierra and Foxy, it's kind of nice to have the old school flavor. You know, oh, well, there's an update for Sierra also. So the C25, I had walked out to the barn to, or I'd run out to the barn, I should say. And I was just going to fire the truck up, drive it around a little bit, just getting it ready for, you know, for its send off for Justin to work his magic with it. And the copper radiator had, I guess, deteriorated, and so it puked all over the floor, which is funny because I literally just got through putting in a new radiator on Foxy, only to have Sierra get jealous and hork up all over the floor of the barn, and so I had to pull that radiator out today, and I'll be getting a new radiator for it. That radiator is not going to be salvageable. It doesn't look like. Looks like it got dinged pretty good at some point also. So it's on the where the bottom hose goes on the radiator. So I don't know, man. You know, but luckily she let go in the barn. Literally, like the truck hadn't been started in about a week or so. Actually been about 2 weeks. Went to go out there to fire it up. I was just going to putter around the neighborhood or whatever. And yep, that's she let go on not driving down the road, which is, thank you, sweetie, I appreciate that. So Sean saying Foxy is a naturally aspirated car and is going to love that first cool 60-degree morning that you have coming up. Yeah, it is. I'm already able to get her to bark forth if I run light on gas. So, yeah, kind of looking forward to that. Scatspeed saying, what up, B? Got the arm flexes. I like it. Shawnee's saying, rear-mounted battery for Foxy. No. Battery is right there. Put my hand on it. There it is. So, no. Not yet, anyway. It may actually end up getting a battery relocation. Mainly just to take some of the clutter out of there. Oh, yeah. Forgot to mention. Oh, so let's talk about Foxy. So, in the tune, here's the funny thing. So, the car is basically done tune-wise. I had some street validation stuff that I needed to get knocked out. There's when you're dealing with a mass air meter, and especially with this older style of mass air, it can be a little bit frustrating because so I'm logging long-term fuel trims, right? And you have to have a correction factor in your long-term fuel trims so that when you go to more or less reprogram the math curve, you've got the right data that you can use to make all that stuff work. And the thing is that it's really not correcting that much. I had gone in and manipulated some things in the tune, and it's just simply not correcting very much based on what I'm commanding. So, but my data log is showing that I do need to make some corrections to the math curve. So, but right now everything's within spec. At least when I say that, I mean I'm not throwing the injector correction isn't all that high or anything like that. It's like I think the max was like 5%. That's like right on the limit of me just going, yeah, okay, let me nth degree this thing, because there's a lot of wiggle room basically within that, the ability of the computer to make adjustments. So anyway, that part of it's basically done. The car is doing really well. Partial throttle, the thing screams. That rattle thing, which what I thought was knocking at 3,300 RPM, basically it was like from 3,400 RPM. So let me tell you what I did. I decided I was going to run an experiment to invalidate the hypothesis that it was knocking or pinging or whatever. And it's one of these noises that was really hard to pinpoint. It wasn't the, the high-pitched ping, and it didn't sound like a low-speed knock. It was just one of the, it sounded like, the best way I can explain it is if you were to ever put playing cards in the spokes of a bicycle, and it went, and that was it. It's like, what the hell was that? So anyway, what I did is in first gear at that load range, at that throttle position, didn't do it. Second gear, same thing. Third gear, same thing. Fourth gear was the only gear that it did it. And so I was thinking, man, this is almost starting to look like it's load based. So what I did is I ran it, well, I'll tell you what what I did is I ran it in fifth gear. The highest load, highest wind resistance, ran it through the sweep of same throttle position, same everything, and no issues at all. Smooth as silk. In fact, the car ran strong, stronger than it should in fifth gear, right? So I was going, yeah, there's no way. There's absolutely no way that spark, it can't be spark knock, especially if it's load-based spark knock, because I'm in fifth gear and it's not wanting to do it. So, did a little experiment. In that load range and at that RPM, I removed 5 degrees of timing. Car still made that noise. I'm like, what in the hell is that? So I lowered timing again by 5 degrees. Keep in mind, I'm commanding, as far as timing goes, I think I was commanding 28 degrees. Now we're at 23. Now it's somewhere around 18, but with modifiers, it was kicking it up to like 19 or 20. And so, again, now we're to 10 degrees taken out of this base timing. Still did it. Took another 5 degrees. Now we're down to 15. Now, at this timing level, the car is really not running right at that load range. It's, I mean, it's one to run, but it's not, it's just kind of flat. And it's at 15 degrees away from where I was, which was, at that timing level, about 7 degrees less than stock. 8 degrees less than stock. So then, it still kind of did it at 15, but it did it a little bit less. And I was thinking, okay, now it's just creating less load because the car's not running as well. So it's got to be a resonance. I took another 5 degrees of timing, and if you're counting, that's 20 degrees of timing out of the car, which ended up being like a full 13 degrees less than stock. And the car, this is where things got funny, because I would roll into that load, I'm at like 9 degrees, 8 degrees of timing. The car just doesn't want to run in that load range. I think I'm commanding like, 12.5 or 12.3 in this load range. And I mean, I'm serious, the car was not wanting to run. It literally wouldn't, it wasn't an active participant in acceleration. And I would roll into the throttle, into the throttle, into the throttle, and then when the throttle reached into open loop timing and fueling, basically what the computer would recognize as wide open, it threw all the timing and all the fuel back at it, and it just would go, It felt like you're hitting it with a 150 shot. It was pretty funny. So anyway, that experiment told me all I needed to know, some type of a resonance within the system. That's just how it's gonna be, but no issues realistically. I know I could have pulled the plugs, but that wasn't gonna tell me what I wanted to know. I wanted to know if timing was gonna make that sound go away, and it wasn't going to. So, fun with tuning. Anyway, if it weren't raining right now, I'd be out doing another street validation with it, but realistically, street validation at this point just means You know, can I keep the thing hung sideways in third gear, and for how long can I do it? Scott Speed saying, "What up, Mason? Got the arm flexes. I like it." Oh, rear mounted. Oh, we already did. Let's see, rear mounted for Foxy, not yet. Sean saying a rear mounted battery for Fox would be pretty cool. I think it would be too. John's asking, are Magnum wiring harnesses the same as a Dodge Charger? Sorta, yeah. They should be practically identical for the for under hood. Scott saying Fox bikes are a great platform. They are a lot of fun. I'll tell you that. You know, one of the things that I'm having to relearn about. Well, let me rephrase this. One of the things that I'm experiencing being back in this Fox body game is it's just such a neat driving experience, such a, what's the word I'm looking for here? It's such an involved driving experience. I mean, you feel everything with the car. Nothing is not telegraphed. If you compare the driving sensation of driving a Fox body, especially one that's as well sorted as this one, to the Challengers or any of the modern cars, for example, you don't have that sense of impending doom with the new cars that you do with one of these old cars, but they are certainly a lot of fun. Let's see. Shawnee's at 73 C&L mass air for Fox body, 65 millimeter throttle body. Actually, no, it is a 77. It is a Pro M77, the big one, the cast aluminum one. And it is a 70 millimeter throttle body, if memory serves me correctly. But yeah, that is basically, that's part of your Windsor starter kit for sure. Sinister Red Eye saying, happy Saturday, B. Got the arm flex. I like it. Saying, oh, happy Saturday to you, Sinister. Appreciate that. Cody saying, crazy how similar the 03 Durango Dakotas and Rams are. I can use parts from either the Ram or the Dakota. Yeah, there's a lot of parts that are interchangeable. I'm not sure. Is that one rated at 395? Does it have the dual runner intake? If so, that intake's actually really good for the 5.7. Here's something to consider. Okay, so if there were a wish that I could have, it would be to have an intake manifold for the 6.4 that was sized, you know, port volume and runner length and all that other kind of stuff, that would be sized proportionally the same way that the 5.7 is, because the 5.7 is actually a little bitty powerhouse. I mean, it's a little bad guy, especially given the mild cam timing that it has with that intake manifold. So 5.7's got some chops, man. It will respond to some mods, no doubt about it. Better than the 6.4 will. Oh, John saying he plans on taking the Hemi and the whole harness and installing it in the Charger. Yeah, it should. A lot of that should cross over. Depending, there could be some things that are year specific, but I don't know of a lot that is such a, you know, such a departure from what you're already used to, especially if the years are fairly close. But make sure the years are fairly close, because you've got the first run of Gen 3s, which has a little bit different wiring harness than the second run of Gen 3s leading into the 2011, 2012 era, where, you know, they went to different coil packs styles and things like that. Just know that coming into it. Zephyr saying, is the Fox body a much more visceral driving experience, being a bit smaller and a ton lighter? Yeah, it is. So the funny thing about it is that you tend to feel everything, and it can be a little bit of like sensory overload at first, because you just feel more. And the funny thing is that it is much, much smaller than the Challenger. I mean, it is, I can't really put it into words, the difference in just physical size of the two vehicles. I mean, we are talking about 1,000 pounds difference here. So, you know, that's huge. Plus, you know, just the physical proportions being much smaller. I just, it's just so much. It's just such a different driving experience all the way around. The Fox body is a little bit more jittery. It's a little bit more skittish. Not near as stable, but it's just so much fun though, no matter how you slice it. KSA Mason, hey bro, I met a dude at the gas pump saying he fills up half E85 and half 91. He says it's stock through 92. I think he's crazy, but he swears up and down he tells a difference. I swear up and down he tells a lie. Because that is no. That is a big no. I'll give you an example. The 392 in most conditions, you're going to be hitting 80% injector duty cycle, and in cold weather you'll be going 85, 90% injector duty cycle. If you're to do that with stock injectors, I mean, unless you're at a real high altitude, which I don't know, and you're running on like E70, I'm just trying to dream up a scenario where that would work. Anyway, I don't think that stuff's going to work, man. I think he's pulling your leg. And no, in fact, he's not going to be able to really tell a difference there because the injector is going to be way outside of its range for injector duty cycle. He won't be able to run the proper amount of fuel in there to cover that that spread. Let me think about that. So if you're to go half and half, that would mean that you would need a minimum of 15% more fuel to make it work. The injectors may cover you for 15%, but your fuel trims will be jacked up, man. Yeah, I wouldn't try to do that. I would not do that if it were my car. Let's see. JL's asking, what do you think about the 3.0 Whipple on the new drag pack? Well, the 3.0 Whipple on the 354 is pretty badass, and they got that thing turned up and set on kill in the factory setting, and there's even more to be had in that car. So yeah, it's a pretty badass setup. I mean, there's no denying it. It's a Whipple compressor, so it's going to be efficient and it's going to do really well. I would say that the 3.0 would be a really good, potentially be a really good way to go instead of trying to go really big on the Hellcat. On the Hellcat platform in general, I think the 3.0 would be a pretty sweet place to be in terms of putting a blower on one of these things. You have smaller, I mean, the thing is with the 3.0 in the Whipple, you're kind of working within a little bit of a sweet spot. You've got smaller rotors, which means less inertial loss, less parasitic loss, all of that. That's not to say that, a larger blower, it'll have an initial hit that's a little bit harder down low, but I mean, dude, just spin the 3.0 harder. I mean, you got to look at it like this. The IHI that's on the Elephant is a 3.0, so. But it is a little bit different design though than the blower that's in the Demon. Let's see. Oh, Cody's saying a lot of people I've met say the 5.7 is slow, but you can't help. Dodge gave them the wrong gearing. Look, let's be honest here. The 5.7 is the corporate get you from A to B V8 that Dodge makes. It's got a lot of things going for it, but really, unless you've got a 6.4 intake or you've got a pickup truck and you've already got a dual runner intake manifold, unless you've got a setup like that, you're not really working with the best setup that you could possibly have, but it's not bad. And, they say that the 5.7 is slow. Man, look. Call up Dr. Differential. There's quite a few people that will argue that the 5.7 isn't slow, all right? Call up Mo's Performance. Talk to Matt. Find out if there's a lot of people saying that 5.7 slow, especially when, you know, Dr. Diff has got trucks and cars that are showing 6.4s their ass on the street. So, just saying, it isn't slow. From the factory, it's a little bit neutered, but it's going to be a bit neutered. It's got to appeal to a more diverse crowd of people that don't necessarily want fast. They want, you know, torquey, smooth is another big deal with V8s. Want it to be smooth. That's where that 5.7 can come in. It's a very smooth engine. Oh, John's saying 2007. If both of them are 07s, then yeah, you should be in good shape with that. Cody's saying, I know the 0708 4.7 intake manifold is compatible with the 03 4.7 as long as you put, I believe, the throttle body adapter for it. I think you might be right on that, but I don't have a whole lot of experience with the 4.7. Sean, thank you very much. Saying nugget for a 5.8 emblem on Foxy. Sleeper look right now. Yeah, she's lying. She's got a little bit of a, you know, a little nod and a wink there. But yeah, I've thought about putting the 5.8 emblem on there. Retiring the 5.0. I got to do some more paint work on this thing too. I'm gonna have to do a lot harder cutting. I think I'm gonna have to just have the hood repainted too, because it's in rough shape. Jamie is asking, when are we going to see the 3rd gen Camaro? You may be seeing it pretty soon. I've got to put a set of tires on the back of it, do a little bit of paint correction on it, but the flipping the clear coat's separating from it, so there's not a whole lot of work I do, but it looks good driving down the road. But I may be doing some things with that thing pretty soon. I got to pull the dash out, get the dash replaced. You know, the cluster itself, I should say, not replaced, but fixed. But once I do that, I'll start being able to, you know, bring some Gen 3 content to you. Shawnee is checking out, saying good night, good stuff. Catch up tomorrow. You got it, brother. John saying thank you, sir. So yeah, getting back to it too, man. The Gen 3, I freaking love that car, man. You know, it's funny. It's got a little TBI, which is throttle body injected 305. And if you're not familiar with what throttle body injected means, it's basically a pair of fuel inject. It looks like a carburetor. Ooh, that sucker just bounced off my face. Okay, so we got the mosquito that just kind of just dotted my eye. When I see that sucker, I'm going to knock it out. But no, the 3rd gen is a TBI 305, and again, what TBI is, it looks like a carburetor, but you have 2 fuel injectors up there, and it disperses fuel through the intake manifold the same way that a carburetor does. It just, instead of the car sucking the air through a carburetor, it still has 2 injectors up there. Basically, it's an intermediate technology between fuel injection, the way that you know it today, which is multi-port, and a carburetor. So it's good stuff. It's not bad. I mean, it's not the best system in the world, but some will argue that if you have a really well sorted TBI setup, you can actually make some pretty decent power. In fact, a lot of the Holley fuel injection kits were all TBI kits, so early on. And again, a lot of that is because there's a lot of charge cooling with that fuel going through the runners, and so that can help in terms of making a little bit of power. But anyway, the funny thing about that car is just how torquey that thing is. That thing is real torquey, has a lot of tip in, throttle response, and you know, that's what you're going to get when you don't have any cam in a small V8, but you know, just lots of port velocity and you know, no real RPM capacity, but man, it's just real snappy out of the hole. So I like driving that thing. What I like about that car is that it's very smooth, and I can run that car at, I don't know, 75, 80 miles an hour, and it just cruises. And I just love eating up miles in that car. So anyway, I'm looking forward to doing some work to that thing here pretty soon. Let's see. Case is saying, I kind of figured the 50-50 mix was bull, but after looking into E85, some folks throw in at about 15% to help with knocking and timing. Crap gas in California may be safer than maybe safer than using boost tank. Well, in California, I'm not condoning the practice, but yeah, I mean, when I lived in San Francisco, the exotic blend fuel that we had up there was interesting to say the least. But yeah, I would say that, I mean, if you added a little bit to it, would it make a difference? Man, I never even thought to try, because just looking at fuel trims and also looking at, injector duty cycle, I don't know if I'd want to mess with it, but hell, I mean, my thing is this. I would look at short-term knock retard with that. If you go from having what's probably 3 or 4 degrees of short-term knock retard to 0, and you're adding, say, a gallon or 2 at fill-up, I mean, look, I can have the greatest theory in the world. I mean, I've never messed with doing that myself. I mean, to me, it would almost, at that mix level, it would just be like a tank of gas that just pissed real hot in terms of E85. But I'd give it a shot and check. I mean, I would want to data log it, though. I would want all the data. I would want to have a plan of attack. I would reset fuel trims. I would reset everything at the pump. Do the mix, put the amount of E85 you think you're going to go, like say 2 gallons of E85 and then fill the rest up full of gasoline. Start there and just monitor and see what it does. I mean, I just don't know. I haven't ever even tried it, but I would monitor short-term fuel trims and knock retard and injector duty cycle. And I would monitor them like my life depended on it. Cody's checking out saying, catch you on the next stream. B, definitely inspired to keep me working on my 4.7 Durango. Absolutely. It's a good engine, man. I think you'll have fun with it for sure. Iron Brotherhood saying, I've got a 2015 Challenger 392 in December and want to keep it in A and feel fast. Besides tires, anything else to enhance the driving experience, like suspension, motor mounts, braces, roll bars? Yeah, so you've got, I think Petty Garage sells a shock tower brace and a rear shock tower brace that'll help stiffen it up a little bit, makes it feel a little bit more planted. Obviously, the diff brace from Performance is PER, the numeral for Nance. That they've got some diff braces that are out that do a pretty good job. But aside from that, increasing the driving experience. Motor mounts, not so much. Suspension, maybe looking to put a set of BMR lower trailing arms on the car. I had those on my SRT, and we had those on the Demon also, and they seem to help a little bit. So I don't have them on the Mistress, but aka Miss Revlon, I don't have them on that car, but I don't. It's not for any other reason. I mean, it's not because I didn't like them. It's just I never have gotten around to putting them on the car. I prefer BMR over Spawn, though. Spawn gets a little noisy, so there's that. And plus, I've got, if you want to see the video, like a how-to video on installation, I've got a how-to on the Spawn bars that I had on my Challenger. So take a look at that if you ever want to see what that install process is like. The lower trailing arms are super easy to put. It'll take you far longer to get the car set up and in the air and have your tools collected than it will for you to actually put those bars in. I mean, I'm not kidding. Especially, you're going to pre-grease them and all that. Taking the bars out and putting the other ones in, it's like a 2-minute drill. There's nothing to it. Roll bars, not so much. They've got pretty beefy anti-roll bars already. But that's what I would do. Take a look at the Petty Garage braces first. Buddy of mine, Chris, runs those on his car, and he likes them a lot. So take a look at that. And then go from there, my friend. King's Eye's asking, what does meth injection do for an engine like in a Hemi engine? Well, if we're talking NA, nothing. There's really nothing that it will do for you. In fact, it will cause you a lot more problems than it will do you any favors. Now, meth injection is water meth injection, I should say, was originally developed for supercharged engines to mitigate issues with low octane fuel for aircraft. At that point in time, aircraft engines were supercharged or turbocharged, primarily in fighter aircraft during World War II. And the idea was they had direct plate injection meth systems that when they would firewall the throttle, you had this extra octane and charge cooling effect that would basically accommodate the extra manifold pressure. The same applies for cars. It doesn't really work on NA cars because when you fire meth, the idea is that the extra octane, by throwing more timing at it, will help you to make more power. Doesn't really work like that with the Hemis. I mean, you can throw 2 or 3 degrees more timing at the car, and it just doesn't ever seem to pick up any power. We've tried this. We've tried it on the Hellcats. We've tried it on the 392s. Give you an example, on E85, there's not a huge departure. I mean, there is more timing, but there's not a huge departure between 93 octane and E85 in terms of timing. We just don't see any gain in power. I've had cars. I had Rob Panton's car. I'll give you a perfect example of this. You know Rob's car from Racer X's channel. It's the white with blue stripes Chargers. Gorgeous car. It's got one of my cams in it. It's got one of my intakes on it. Pretty much walks away from every other 392 car that he comes up against. When I had his car on the dyno, Alex had tuned it, and it was running great. And I had a little bit of time, and I had promised myself, did I get it? No, I didn't. I promised myself that I would see if I could just eke something else out of the car and just try to do something with this thing power-wise. Tried 2 degrees of timing over what was already in the car. Nothing. Tried 3 degrees of timing. Nothing. Because sometimes you'll hit a plateau, and then you can kick up again. So you can get up to a certain point. It won't make any more power. Play around with timing a little bit more. You don't see any change in knock sensor feedback. And then you add a couple of more degrees of timing, it goes, yoop, and it pops up out of nowhere. It's kind of weird. It kind of hits this weird sine wave plateau deal. Anyway, I kept trying to throw timing at it. The car never did respond to it. In fact, started losing power. This car was just over time. So the extra octane won't help you. Now you might say, okay, well, because you can't throw enough timing at it to really take advantage of it. So the next question might be, well, okay, what about charge cooling? Not particularly, man. Here's the problem with that. There's not, first of all, you've got an intake manifold that's not designed to carry a fluid. It's really only there to carry air. The fluid is injected at the valve itself. So because of that, you can potentially run into a distribution issue where this is just pulling numbers out of the air ish. I mean, I kind of there's a little bit of truth to this, but let's say cylinders 7 and 8 get a big shot of the meth. Cylinders 1 and 2 don't see any of it, and a couple of your middle cylinders see big shots. Some see moderate shots, but there's no real consistency cylinder to cylinder to cylinder because it is a liquid. It's not a gas like nitrous oxide. It's a liquid, and so things are just going on in there that really aren't normal. And as a liquid, it's getting drug along the sides of the runners, and you're not having a good time with it. I have never seen a kit like that yield any gains. I've only seen it go in the exact opposite direction. Now, on a supercharged car, it's a different story. But even then, you can run into distribution issues. And I always would say, look, try to have at least a plenum style of an injector where you've got at least, you know, an injector in the plenum, or you've got several injectors in the plenum. You're kind of fogging the plenum with this stuff. If you can't go the direct port method, that's the other way I would do it. Again, it's more of a distribution issue than anything else. But the main issue is, the main question is, does it work? And not just in terms of making power. Let's say the distribution was screwed up, but the distribution problem wasn't going to cause you any real issues. Even then, it doesn't help you make any more power, because I can't just throw the house at it in terms of timing. So, and again, part of that could have been, you know, with Rob's car. I mean, the car just never really responded to a lot of timing. So, you know, these Hemis, you got 2 spark plugs that are firing, which means you're halving your flame front speed. The timing thing, it doesn't really respond the way that you would think a car would respond. There's so many little nuances too to these Hemis that lend it to not be as responsive to changes in timing. Again, a lot of it has to do with that flame front propagation. Because you got a flame front that, instead of just going from like your spark plug and going bang and then propagating out and then down, in this way you've got 2 of them that are going bang and they're taking up the same amount of space twice as fast and then out. So that's why you don't need the same timing. A lot of goofy stuff goes into the Hemis. Oh, Zephyr saying KW makes a sweet set of coilovers for the Challenger and Charger. Very cool. And Hector's saying, I just bought an eBay BMR upper and lower trailing arm. Oh, just now. And will it also fit any of the adjustability problems that the rear suspension on the Charger has? Oh, I think I see what you're saying. So if you bought the adjustable ones, then yeah, you can. Now, when you're putting it together, just make sure that you use your bolt technique and, you know, have your stockers, get the new ones, loosen everything up, slide the bolts through the bushings, and then tighten everything down at that rate to get your initial install length. But if you got the upper, the camber supports and the trailing arms, and yeah, especially if you got a lowered car, they are mandatory as far as I'm concerned, because when these cars, if you lower them, the problem is, you know, you start messing with coilovers and things like that, where you're going to initially have, or you're inherently going to want to have a lower ride height. The problem is that your camber, you basically start to have negative camber at that point, and your tires lose contact patch. And the idea is that you get that camber, you want to bring everything kind of back in line. And again, that's how to properly get the thing to set up and have it handle properly as well. All right, so getting back to it, hopefully that answers the questions, guys. But no, I was going back and looking at some of the time slips on Little Miss Revlon, aka the Mistress, and one of the things that I noticed is that just how hard that car 60 foots. And I didn't want to do anything in the tune to really lose any of that. But, you know, maintaining those, you know, high 140, 60 foots, that's what it's going to take to keep that thing competitive. And again, to answer the question, you know, is it the fastest one of its kind? I don't know if it's the fastest, but she sure as hell is right up there with the top of them. You know, easily top 3, I would say, in its state of tune and all of that. But I could be wrong, but hey, you know, we can micro record each other to death when it comes to that kind of stuff. Well, guys, we are hitting on an hour and a half. I want to thank everybody for hanging out with me tonight. Just want to get you guys those updates, let you know what the plans are for Little Miss Revlon, let you know what I've been up to with Foxy. Can't wait to see you guys on the next one. Until then, guys, stay safe, God bless, and we will catch you later. That's a wrap, guys. Adios.